Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Special Finance Committee meeting of February 11th, 2025. The District of Metchosin sits on the traditional territory of the Shiano and Sauk First Nations. We thank them for sharing this land. Please be sure to have your cell phones turned off during the meeting. Committee, we have an agenda before you. Are there any additions or changes to this agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve, please? Motion by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And public participation. Please note that all comments made during public participation will be heard by the Finance Committee and taken into consideration. Please feel free to step up to the mic, stating your name and the street on which you live.
Jim McPherson. My comments basically relate to the long-term financial plan to 2029. And I presume that buried in that review is the projected purchase of a new fire truck to replace one here estimated at $500,000. I have three comments. First, I question the rationale, the need, and the desirability to have such a vehicle when call-outs for structure fires are so very low, 3, 4, 5 a month. Second, the cost of the new truck would be partially covered by selling the one we have to another fire department. Who else would be looking for another fire truck or used fire truck? So why would the receiving community find this fire truck to be quite acceptable for their needs when we don't find it useful for ours? It doesn't compute. Third, if Trump's tariffs are still in place, the projected cost of the new fire truck will be grossly underestimated. And given the state of Metchosin's finances, I do believe that purchasing a new fire truck is a really bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jill Armstrong, Lysandra Road. So I wasn't planning on speaking, but I just have to say the world is in a total mess right now, and things have changed in the last year, 2 years, and I think our finances have to change as well. I live on limited income, and that's not secure anymore, and I think every single cent that is projected to be spent or is on the books to be spent, we have to rethink everything because we don't have any financial security in the world or Canada anymore. So I think everybody needs to take responsibility for this, and I think at all levels of government, including municipal, because our taxes we can't afford anymore. So I'm just so adamant about this. I mean, life is different now. And I just think you need to really be careful about what you choose to spend your money on. Trails, anything like that has to be a priority. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Tamara Ballard, Metchosin resident, taxpayer. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight to you guys and share my opinions. Can you hear me? Is that better? Okay. So at last night's council meeting, I was watching from home, and there was a bit of a heated, I'm going to change a little bit what I wrote here. There was a bit of a heated situation between the way Councillor Donaldson spoke to Councillor Abt. I felt it was a bit harsh, and it clearly created tension. I think it's really important for elected officials to model respectful communication within the workplace, as well as out in public. That's what I have to say about that. And I also want to add that I do understand exactly what you just said. But with that being said, I do know that if we had an extra public works crew, they can separate, they can go in two groups, they can work efficiently in two groups. When there's only 3 of them, if say one's on holidays, one's sick, that leaves one person. That person cannot go and work on roadside trails due to WCB. They cannot operate machinery, saws example, and therefore tying their hands. So they have to find things to keep themselves busy. And so, again, I would like to say that I do support hiring another public works crew. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll move on with the agenda. We have a staff report of 2025 to 2029 draft 5-year financial plan. And I would like to ask CFO Creek to come to, well, you can speak, I guess, from your own mic now, to do the PowerPoint presentation or speak at the podium, your choice.
Thank you, Chair and Mayor, Council. I'll try here, although I do feel better if I was standing there. Try out this one though,
Sure.
then we'll move on to the next one, standing. All right, so here we are, presenting the draft 2025 through 2029 financial plan. This kind of takes into... One second. All right, so this draft financial plan kind of takes into account everything that we talked about previously, made some adjustments, and then some new information regarding ECOM 911, RCMP, some other provincial items. And so that's where we get to here. I figured I'd throw out the most important number for everybody, what they want to know right off the top. So with the current draft financial plan, we'd be looking at $52.38 increase for the average residential home. That's sitting at about 1.27 million now. It's gone down a little bit from 2024. The police tax levy would increase by $7.28 per year, and the ECOM levy would be $19.76 or $1.65 per month. The way that I looked at the ECOM levy was we had a bit of a surplus with our RCMP this year. We had a number of accruals in 2023 that we were able to eat up in 2024, resulting in a surplus right around $300,000. So I'm proposing, or staff's proposing, to use that surplus, spread that over the next 5 years to reduce the ECOM 911 levy that we need to collect by about $60,000 per year. So 1976 is with that reserve usage. If we don't use it and you want to put that somewhere else, the total cost would be $47.98 per year or $4 a month. So when we chosen, based on what we're looking at now, a 1% tax increase for your average residential home, it equals a $14.33 increase. And a 1% tax increase generates $30,000 of property taxes and $10,000 of federal payment in lieu of taxes, what we get from the D&D. So what do you get for your taxes when you come here? So the district of chosen provides services to over 5,000 residents across 1,900 properties. There's a fire department that's available 24/7. We currently have a public works department with 3.25 full-time equivalents to maintain the 90.5 kilometers of roads, 8 kilometers of roadside trails, and 32 municipal properties. We've got 8.75 FTE for general administration, building inspection, planning department, bylaw support. We've got 9 advisory committees, and then grants and aid for local community groups, on top of a few other things. In 2025, here is the capital plan that's currently been laid out. The total is 1.334 million. I had a conversation with the CRD yesterday about the bulk water station. So originally that was approved by council to be spent in 2026 for $175,000. That was going to come out of our climate action fund. They would like to start the design phase, and procuring the equipment for it in 2025 should help speed up the process rather than just jumping into it in January. So I'm going to seek approval from council to say we can give the money to the CRD this year rather than waiting until next year. Again, no impact on taxes because it's just coming out of the grant funding that we've received already. But that was the only change there. And then heading up what's next. So based on the discussion this evening, staff would take back any requested changes, amend the budget as needed, and then hopefully be able to have one more budget meeting here by the end of February. March 5th, there's the open house for the active transportation plan. I will be there to I'll have a couple poster boards with some information on where $1 of your taxes go for each department for public works and fire, administration, bylaw, school, that kind of thing. And then ideally April 7th, we do the first, second, third reading of the draft of the financial plan and the tax rate bylaw, with a final reading on April 21st and taxes due by July 2nd. I'm thinking we might have to move up the April 21st date. As we all know, Canada Post went on strike there, and they were forced back into work in December, right at the end. Their agreement is only good until May 22nd, at which point they could then go back on strike, which would be absolutely terrible timing for us, because we send out our tax notices right around that time. So I kind of want to get this done early April, mid-April, so we can print, send the tax notices, have everything mailed so everybody's got everything before May 22nd, in case the worst case scenario there. I guess we'll leave it there. Any questions?
Committee, any questions for CFO Creek? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, through the chair. The percentage tax increase then for municipal would be what? Police tax and the e-com?
Yeah, so for the chair, sorry. So for the average residential property, the tax increase would be 3.39% for the municipal portion, and the police tax would go up by 2.86%. Now those two numbers do not add together, as the police tax collects far less than what the municipal tax is. So it would be closer to like 3.39 plus about 0.75 if you wanted to push them together.
So perhaps I could follow up through the chair. If we think of municipal taxes and then other taxing authorities, the police is now our responsibility, so it'd be a part of the municipal tax. Are you saying that the total increase then would be 3.39 plus 0.75?
Correct.
And then the e-com, there's two options, and in the documents, one is using this reserve and one is not. What would be the percentage increase if we just go straight at it? In other words, don't use the reserve.
As a percentage, 49. It's about, through the chair, sorry, would be, well, I want to say, top head, like 2.8% without the reserve usage, and be 1.15 with.
Thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. If we need to talk about the reserve a little further, sorry, the use of the reserve for the 911 charge, that might be interesting, but it strikes me it is a good use of the reserve, particularly to offset a significant cost that we're seeing immediately. I just want to commend Mayor Little and the other mayors in this area who have been fighting against this charge. And this has come up and been an issue at UBCM for a long time in terms of the potential of a cell phone levy and also not imposing the downloading the fees to municipalities until there is actually a governance review. Unfortunately, the province hasn't heard that, such that they've been willing to make a change, but the mayors have put up a very good fight. Yeah, so, I mean, I think we have to contend now with how we're going to deal with that in terms of our budget. I would support applying the police reserve to that right now. I think there is a chance maybe there will be some sort of change as the years go on here, but yeah, immediately I think it's a good move. So
Thank you.
I have a few other questions, but I'll just,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyone else? Mayor Little?
Thanks for that. Yeah, we did have a meeting with Minister Beggs after our press conference at the legislature. He did hear us. He did commit to a governance review, but the governance review is separate from the billing. And I think it's wise for each municipality to put in their budgets the amount that will cost for the e-com. I'm hopeful that other years this will be reversed and that they will start working on directing their costs and recovering the costs to a cell phone levy. As you mentioned and I mentioned at the press conference, there's many other ways, many other provinces that have been able to apply a cell phone levy for this initiative. And I think BC should be able to figure it out as well. But that won't be this year. We didn't get a promise from Minister Beggs that he would reverse or position it so that they would take the cost for this year. That was rather unfortunate. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no. I just think it's wise that we put it in our taxes for this year. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Creek? Councillor Epp? Okay. Okay, Mr. Creek, next.
Thank you, through the chair. For all the residents in person or anybody online. So right now, you can go online or call and claim your homeowner grant, get that out of the way. It's always a bit of a contentious issue when we end up applying a penalty come July 3rd on anybody's taxes who haven't claimed their homeowner grant, completely separate from the speculation tax, completely separate from the deferment, have to do it every single year. And you can do it now, you can get a leg up on it, please do it. I can't do anything with the tax penalty. And then there is another option as well. Anybody over the age of 55 or families with children, you can defer your taxes. Right now, the interest rate is 4.95%. It's going to fall to 3.7% as of April 1st. Could be lower if the Federal Reserve reduces their rate in March. If they don't, it'll be 3.7. Simple interest, really good use of money. Don't pay us, keep the money in your pocket, go invest it, do something better with it. We're still made whole by the province by the end of the year. The rest of the report. So in Schedule A, there's the detail of the financial plan summary on the municipal taxes, showing all the money that's coming in from utilities, the grants in lieu of taxes, fees and charges, other revenue, and their use of reserves to pay for capital. And then the collections for regional services such as the West Shore and library, along with the police funding that is sent to the RCMP. And then the expense breakdown for each department, so general government, protective services, which includes the fire department, RCMP, bylaw, building inspection, transportation services, planning, recreation and culture, school sites, and then our total capital. Although the one in the report for capital expenditures is $175,000 short. That money would be moved from the 2026 year What are we talking about? Under expenditures, third last line, where it's 1.159, 500. You'd add 175,000 for the bulk water, and you would deduct that from the 2026 capital expenditure. And then it shows just as transfers to the GV Greater Victoria Public Library and the West Shore Recreation. End up balancing out as we can't have a surplus or deficit because of provincial legislation. Any questions on Schedule A?
Yeah, I'm wondering if for everybody, if we could separate out, we have protective services, and is both fire department and police through the chair? I wonder if it's possible to separate that out, because we're now absorbing a much bigger part of the police, and it'd be nice to be able to follow that line over time.
Through the chair, the most I could do is kind of show the breakdown of what goes into protective services. I could come up with just a specific line for policing services.
I think it might be valuable because it's a big number.
Yep.
And it would help us all say, oh yeah, that's where the police is. I mean, it's in there. Anyway, if that could be done, I think it would help us in looking at the numbers going forward.
So through the chair, I would say the number that you could take out of protective services right now is equal to the police funding line for revenue. So the 1,080,214. That number is exactly what matches to the police in protective services.
So through the chair, you take the number at the top of the page?
Yeah. So the police funding for 1,080,214. You can deduct that from protective services for 2.6, and the rest would be for the fire department, building inspection, bylaw.
Thank you. I did.
Yeah. The police funding? Second last line, just above the total funding sources.
And just a separate question about the, just looking at the spreadsheet. If we take the expenditures at the top of recreational services, 127,000 and change, the transfers for library services, and the transfers for West Shore Rec up in the expenditures, and then we go down to the expenditures at the bottom. I think they're all under recreational and cultural services, or for a figure of 1.6 million.
So through the chair, the revenue under total funding sources for collections for regional services, the 968,
yeah,
that exactly matches the total for transfers for library services and transfers for West Shore Recreation. The recreation and cultural services for 127,000, that's solely us and what we have at the community house, the grants for the different committees like Parks and Trails and MEASC, the benches, that type of thing.
Uh-huh. And what's the very large number then, the 1.6 million, 1.696 million at the bottom under expenditures? What makes up that figure?
Through the chair, my apologies. Oh, okay, so you were looking at the financial plans for PSAP reporting. So yeah, the recreation, yeah, it does include the library and West Shore. It's just the way of showing it. Under community charter reporting, we have to break out because it's not really our expense, right? It's a requisition to us. All we do is collect the money on their behalf and remit it. But for PSAP reporting and accounting standards, it does end up showing up as, oh, here's an expense for you guys because we get a bill, technically.
Well, and then I guess my question then would be, they differ by about $600,000, the totals at the top and the totals at the bottom, and is there a reason for that? Like the 127, 346, and 622.
Good question. Through the chair, I will have to double check on that one and what is added into there to make up that difference.
Thank you.
Nope.
Councillor Shukin?
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. For you, a question to Mr. Creek. It looks like we have a big jump in under the revenue sort of section, fees and charges from 2024 to what's projected in 2025. Can you dig into that a little for us?
Through the chair. So a lot of that is coming from our the school site revenue increasing, and then the additional fees that we're collecting based on the building permits that are coming in. So that is, as you saw, I think probably in the January report, where we collected about 34,000 for the year. We're almost there already in this year, so things have definitely picked up and improved. So we bumped up that along with the cost of our fees. And then I would have to dig in for another 100,000 to remind myself of exactly what was in there. Apologies.
Along similar lines, there's a drop from 2024 to what's projected in 2025 for other revenue. Some insights into the number.
So through the chair, the other revenue was a drop because of
I trust we'll come back to Mr. Creed.
yeah,
just
at
wondering
some point.
if it's-
I'll come back with a better
Yeah,
answer.
if it's perhaps Pilts and casino revenue, perhaps?
Through the chair. So casino revenue did go down, but not that much. They were projecting just a $5,000 drop, so that'd be a little bit. But the Pilts, the Pilts are in the grants in lieu of taxes line, and I'm actually projecting an increase on those based on the original budget for 2024 came in about 120,000 less than what we collected, and I'm now based on the 2025 assessment and what they've paid in past history. I bumped it up in order to account for how much money we have collected, in order to offset how much taxes have to be increased on residential property owners.
Any other questions at this point, committee? Mayor Little?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, CFO Creeks, could you explain to me where the new VIMQ charge is captured on this Schedule A?
So through the chair, so actually, after discussing with CAO Payette, the RCMP is not going to be able to charge us for the VIMQ in 2025. They're still working out their paperwork and kinks in the background. We're expecting it in 2026. So I actually removed it for this year's budget, which saved us 35,000. It was offset though by the increase for something else for policing, but I can't actually talk. My apologies. Yeah.
So
But yeah, it was
through the
removed
chair-
for this year.
through the chair, so we will have to pay in 2026, and it could be 35,000, it could be more, could be less.
Through the chair? Correct. So I budgeted in based on like an inflation increase from the 35,000 we would have paid in 2025. So I think it's about 37,000, 38,000 for 2026 that's in the budget for now. So yeah, 26 through 29 has the VIMQ inside.
But we're still, through the chair, sorry, we're still covered by VIMQ. And right now, those costs are within the police services, the whatever we pay per police officer, that's covered. The VIMQ is covered in that fee, right?
Through chair? Correct. It's still covered by our regular RCMP contract. They just haven't broken it out as a separate charge to hit us with yet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gray?
You might clarify for the audience that VIMQ is the Vancouver Island Major Crimes Unit.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, I just wondered, one thing that I'm having a little bit of trouble with the Schedule A is orienting myself, from our previous discussions. I'm wondering when the Q4 numbers will be here. so that we could take a look at those.
Through the chair, still working on finalizing the Q4 numbers. We just received our final 2024 invoices last week through our accounts payable. So there's still a couple invoices that we have to book into receivables, and then still waiting for a few accrual adjustments to happen, but should be early March when we get to finish that.
Good question. Anyone else have a comment at this point? Seeing none, let's move on. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Question to Mr. Creek. We are showing a surplus from 2024. Is that correct? And the level?
Through the chair, correct. There is still a surplus. Like our investment revenue, much higher than budgeted.
Yeah.
The police protection services, much lower.
Yeah.
And then a few other items, like just like the PILT, also being over budget by about 5-10%. So there's enough additional revenue in there, and then costs for a number of departments were under budget, such as snow clearing. Nothing happened until this year, so
Yeah. Yeah.
we're pretty under on public works as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Creek.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, thank you. Schedule B. So this expense breakdown shows the difference between our 2024 budget and then the first time I presented the 2025 budget for each department. This meeting is column 3 for the 2025 second budget. This is where we're at today. The 2025 budget adjustment is our current budget, so column 3 minus column 1 of the 2024 budget, so how much it's gone up or down. And then the budget meeting variance comes from column 3 minus column 2. So as the mayor is asking about VIMQ, that is why we have a reduction in our policing costs for this year. We had it in the first budget, got to remove it in the second one, and then we also reduced the guard charges that our CMP was expected to charge us based on the recent invoice for 2025. It was significantly less than what we had budgeted for, and so that's where we get some savings there. Same thing with Ecom. So we finally got our final figure from them in a letter at the end of January, so that was able to go down by 16,000. General administration, we adjusted for wages and benefits. That saved us about $17,000. There was a few other charges as well.
Just wonder if we might slow it down a little bit and talk about each item that we've got here. Would that be okay through the chair? So the police is the first one. So I just want to ask Mr. Creek through the chair, I don't see how the numbers in column 3 tie into the financial plan summary. So if we look at police, for example, the figure I think is 976,614 in Schedule B. And then when I look at police, I guess I'll use the number 1,080,214. So I'm not clear on how this sheet that we're looking at Schedule B. So all the numbers down that column, 2025 second budget, don't match the numbers in the financial plan summary. And I wasn't sure how I was reading it or whether I was reading it correctly.
So through the chair, the police and Ecom 911, if you add those together, those come up to the 1,080,214. So it's just that I broke Schedule B out. Now I presented through each of the budget meetings for here's the one department by that. On the financial plan itself, some of these end up being combined, just policing costs, and then the fire department EOC, that gets matched up with bylaw and building inspection, and then that type of thing. So it's like these numbers themselves on a line by line won't match the line by line on the financial plan.
So maybe I'll just comment, with those not matching and not having the Q4 results or some other documents sort of updated, it's very hard to sort of understand what these numbers mean. I realize with the spreadsheets that you can have on the computer, you can look at them all, but it's hard for us to follow along, to be honest. But on the, but you've solved the one question for that one line, the police and e-com being tied together. Would now be the correct time to talk about the e-com and putting it in reserve, taking money from reserves or not, and that sort of thing?
CFO Creek, do you want to finish going through Schedule B, or would you want to do this line by line to answer this final question of, or this last question, I should say, of Councillor Grace?
So through the chair, doesn't really matter to me. I'd say if you guys wanted to talk about Ecom 911, that's the big question coming into here, is whether or not you want to use the reserve. And then we can move on to the rest of it, because that's the only real kicker right now on how much this is going to affect property taxes coming forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Councillor Grace, that
Yeah,
reasonable?
certainly, and I'd like just to stop at each one so that we can talk about each one, because going back to earlier notes, trying to figure out what's happened, and that would be a helpful way to go through it. But yes, as regards e-com, I think if we talked about that, that'd be useful. My own view on it is that the police reserve was set up, to soften the blow of the police coming in, and it's there for us to use that. And because we have lower expenditures in police, it means that money will last longer and make that even easier for the community. The e-com, my view, everybody knows about it. The community's aware of it. It's been in the newspapers. The mayor's done a good job in terms of getting out in the public with it, the event at the legislature and everything. And it would be my view that we're better to face the pain now than to suffer later. In other words, take it now and have the community pay for it now, so everybody knows what it's about. If we use the reserve, it gets more confusing. A few years from now, people will be asking, what is it? Why are we paying it? And we're kind of in a good moment now, so pay now or pay later. I'd say pay now.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I'm going to argue in favor of Mr. Creek's plan to draw upon the reserve now. This is a new fee that we're having to absorb all of a sudden. We've had a break with the police because of their staffing issues. And in time, we are going to have to pay for both. I think in terms of, one thing I will just say about the last few years is this council has had to shepherd in a number of new charges in a way that I don't think any other council, like in recent memory, has had. So whether that is policing, whether that is new staff here, whether that is new staff in the fire department, we're also talking about the potential of a new fire hall. So I think where we can give our taxpayers a break and still make sure that we're bringing in those essential services, I'm in favor of that. So the one thing is true, though, is that we are going to be bearing the full cost of this in time. So where we can fetch a break, I would suggest we do it. So.
I would have to agree with every finance meeting we've had and every council meeting we've had. We've heard from the public about the excruciating increases in costs and doing our best to keep our costs low with balancing the needs of the community. The reserves are there. They've already been taxed money. It's already been taxed to the residents. And even today we heard residents imploring us to do our best to keep our tax down. And so I think that the reserve there does soften that phasing in. We will, like the mayor said, have to pay for this. We all know that. It's out there in the public more and more. So nobody's obviously can't run away from it. It's here to stay. It's how we manage it. So I agree with Mr. Creek in using the reserves for this to help soften it somewhat for our taxpayers. Councillor Rapp.
Yes, I also agree with using the reserves. I think we've been hit with an extraordinary bunch of unexpected increases this year. And so this will help give us a little bit of a break, and hopefully next year we won't have the drastic increases from West Shore Parks and Rec and the library that we are getting this year, as well as some of the other things. So I would support using the reserves.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, I support using the reserves as well. The police reserve was set up for policing for protective services, and we can't do RCMP protective services without the dispatch. And so it's part and parcel. One, yes, we will have to pay for it at some point. Hopefully, the mayors will all stay on this with the minister to try and get it at least lowered or get them to pay for more of the portion, but we'll continue our advocacy, hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Councillor Shukin, and then Councillor Gray. Go ahead.
Well, like Councillor Gray, I was going to make a motion to, I don't know if we need one, but I feel like we do, but I might want. Oh. Okay. I would move that the policing reserve be utilized to offset the increased costs, increase the Econ 911 costs as recommended by our Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, and a seconder by Councillor Epp. Any further discussion? Councillor Gray?
Just want to recognize that we're not avoiding this cost, we're simply delaying it. So the motion is to give the pain just a little bit later. I'm concerned about where the economy is going with the big issue of tariffs coming. We heard the other day, by 2028, there'll be a loss of $69 billion to the province, 120,000 jobs lost. People will be in a difficult time to pay later. I'm thinking it'd be good to get by the pain now.
Okay, so we have a motion at the table. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Opposed by Councillor Gray. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Creek. Next, please.
So through the chair, I guess, general administration. So the 2024 budget was 1.367 million. The new 2025 is projected to be 1.412 million. Total increase of 45,299. This is 17,379 less than the previous presented budget. Ended up just adjusting wages and benefits form, and then our janitorial contract came in at half the increase that it was originally projected at, partially offset by Fortis BC increasing their cost by 17.5%, but here and there, just a few different numbers. Discussion?
Councillor Gray?
Does this include the voting machine for $5,000?
Through chair? Yes, it does. So it's $5,000 going towards that in 2025 for lease in 2026.
Is that essential, Chair Donaldson? I don't know if it's required under law, or is it just something that we're doing ourselves?
I believe, as it was explained to us from our previous CFO, CAO, was the expense for the staffing to do this by hand until like 2 a.m. in the morning or whatever it was on the last election is how we came to the decision of doing an automated version. And I believe Mr. Creek had presented to us that it's not a purchase of the machine, it's a lease or a rental. Is that correct?
Through chair, correct. It would be leased through BC elections.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't recall those numbers, but it would be helpful to know the difference, what we're saving. If we could figure that out, I would appreciate that. Does this include the hearing loop for council chambers of $2,000?
Through chair, yes, it does.
Thanks. I think we talked before just about that amongst council. It might be something we might avoid depending on if we can get these microphones working properly. We want to be sure hearing impaired people can hear well.
Yes.
So I was in favor and made the motion to pay the $2,000, but if we can get these things fixed up, that might be a savings during the year. This past year, we supported Youth Parliament, $450 out of the general government pot. I think I'd like to be sure that we can do that again next year. I spoke to Colin Sparks, who did that and really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful thing. It turns out it's the kind of an experience where you keep going. So Colin would apply to go again next year. That's his hope. I wondered if we would have the room in our budget to increase it so another young person might attend, whether we would have another $450 for somebody else to join in. I think it was in a budget that there was room. I just don't know where it was from. And it wouldn't be a question to answer today, but I wonder if we could check that one through the chair to Mr. Creek.
So through the chair, it basically came out of just shrunk the amount of surplus that we'd have in 2024. So if you want to approve adding an extra $500 into your, we basically consider it a granted aid deal. So if you want to add that to it, go for it. Not opposed.
We do that today, or that comes up later?
Do it, chair. I'd just do it now if you want to.
Want to make a motion to that, Councillor Gray?
Sure, I'd make a motion that we support 2 youth to attend the Youth Parliament in 2025.
And a seconder to this motion? Seconded by Councillor Shukin. Any discussion, committee?
A number of us attended a really moving day with the CRD had arranged with First Nations and municipal leaders from elsewhere. And I remember very well the person who had been the mayor, and I guess it was Powell River for a number of terms, said we really need to invest in our youth and get them involved and interested in civic government. And that's the reason why I proposed this last year and making the proposition this year.
Councillor Epp.
Did we have several applications to do this?
Yes, we had another young person interested as well.
So in reading through these documents today, I did see that we've removed $5,000 from, I think the line item was for the treaty discussions. So we're moving money around. $1,000 for supporting youth parliament. It's not going to break the bank, obviously. What I would like to see is if we're sending, not if, but as we encourage youth to get involved with local governments, that we did get a wonderful, fulsome report from Mr. Sparks. And it would be great for us to actually either put it on our website or have a presentation so that the public also is aware of the investment in our youth to be involved with government. So I'd like to encourage that as well. Okay, so I think we have a motion. Councillor Shukin did second it. You have a comment, Councillor Shukin?
So the question is an additional $500 or $500?
Well, two roles, so it's a total of $1,000, I suspect.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so no more comments. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Opposed by Councillor, or Mayor Little. Thank you. Okay, next step.
Go through the chair. The bylaw department. So 2024 budget was 165,000, bumping up to 169,196. Total adjustment of 3,400. Most of that increase again just kind of goes back to our union agreement and then inflation on supplies, that type of thing. It had gone down $252 from our first budget meeting that related to the CRD bylaw contract. When I reviewed that, their fee stays the same through 2026. So I said, all right, there's not going to be a 2% jump, so that's where we got to save $252.
Okay.
Discussion?
Any discussion, committee? No? Okay, next line.
Through chair. So the next one is the building department. 2024 was 136,000. Right now we're projected to be 139,000, which is a $3,200 increase. Again, this came down to the QP benefits, wages. The reduction of 4,557 from the first budget mostly relates to the building inspection vehicle was fully amortized in 2024, so there's no longer that charge happening. And that's, we're going to save about $5,000. Discussion?
Committee? Discussion? No comments? Keep going.
Through your chair, next up is the planning department. So it was 144,000 up to 149,000, $4,600 increase. The budget variance comes in at 1,138. This is related to ortho photos that we are doing in partnership with the CRD. By joining in with them, and all the other municipalities, we end up getting cheaper than trying to hire our own pilot to fly around and take photos. Discussion?
Councillor Gray.
Just one question. I wondered, not something maybe you'd know today, but this, I believe it's under this budget line where we have the money for rabbit management. And we had some discussion about it last year. We doubled the budget from 2023 to 2024. And I wondered if we use that up or we can drop it back to the 2023 figures, where that might be at. Again, maybe a question for another day, I'm not sure.
Through chair, I would have to check that account to see what was spent, but we did just leave it at the $20,000 number for 2025.
Thank you.
While we're on that topic, it was announced yesterday. Well, I don't know if it's publicly announced, but it certainly was on social media that Saanich District has put a resolution together for AVIC about feral rabbits. So please, colleagues at this table, when we go to AVIC, speak about that and how it's affected our community. This is really critical. Councillor Gray.
And I might just, if we could just drop back to general government, we jumped ahead there. We had, I think it was $1,400 for the 2 volunteer recognition summer evenings. Yeah, and might we be able to do 2 of them this year then? I think we had 1 last year.
I believe one of the reasons we did just 1 is we chose to not have activities, including council meetings in August. Would that be correct, Mayor Little? I don't know. Okay. We only did the 1 volunteer appreciation in July, and then we have our awards ceremony at the Community Day in September.
If we only have 1, there's $700 we can cut back.
Okay.
The other question I had was about the CRD Food Land Access Program. I'm not sure where it is in the budget, but it sounds like that will cost us about $11,000. And I'm aware that North Saanich and Central Saanich have apparently decided to oppose the Food Land Access Program. It was in our agricultural plan, and the ag plan said there was going to be some community consultation and that before decisions were reached. But this is coming to CRD, I think, tomorrow, and it'll be an $11,000 charge to us. And we haven't had a chance to talk about it. I wondered just about that charge. That's twice the amount that we put into the grants and aids every year.
Through the chair, I do not have anything for a food land budget in any of this. So I was unaware of the $11,000 charge. Could certainly add it in. Impact taxes by about, get another 0.25 on the current tax rate. And is that about $3.75 for everybody?
Councillor Shukin.
So as much as I'm aware of the Food Lands program or the initiative, it's a levy that will come through the CRD on individual taxpayers. I'm not sure it actually costs the district as much as I understand about it. So,
Mayor Little, can you comment on that? This program is not just brand new, because we
Yeah, no, well, it is a brand new program. It's just gone through the alternate approval process that AEP passed. And so that is for borrowing for the food lands access. So it'll come through a levy. And the figure of $11,000, that didn't come from the CRD. that came from an opponent of the Foodlands Trust, so I don't know how accurate it could be, but I don't know how accurate that is.
Okay, thank you for
This
that, Claire.
was, I had significant feedback from the agricultural community, agricultural committee, that they were in favor of the Foodlands Trust. So when this was presented to the CRD last year, I voted in favor, as did Central Saanich, and I believe North Saanich at that time voted against it.
Councillor Gray and then Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, I think through the chair to Councillor Shukin's point, I think the estimate of $11,000 would be in addition to our what we would call other taxing authorities, but we're part of making the decision on that. And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it, it's just we haven't discussed it. And there was in our ag plan the idea that we'd hear about it and then presumably be some discussion about it at some point. The other issue there in the ag plan was that we would identify municipal-owned land that could be used for farming. I'm not aware there is any, but I think that was a task before us. Could I ask through the chair to Mayor Little, there's not in this move by the CRD any idea of advancing biosolids being put on farmland or anything like that?
I didn't quite hear you state that. There's biosolids where?
I'm just asking, there's no thought that this would be a way of advancing the idea of putting biosolids on farmland?
There's still a commitment to the ban of spreading biosolids on agricultural land.
Any other comments? Okay. Okay, Mr. Creek.
Through the chair, I guess, moving on to the Recreation Department. So original budget for 2024 was $78,411. Current estimate for 2025 is $121,684. Total increase of $43,273 from the 2024 budget. 40,000 of that is coming related to the Duke Road Trail Study and the Parks and Trail Master Plan, which is going to be funded through the gas tax. So it doesn't actually end up costing the taxpayer any additional funding. We collect that money from the province and we're going to be paying it. So what I do at the very bottom, I kind of break out what's the actual impact on taxes versus not impact on taxes. So the 145 versus the 185. Discussion?
Councillor Johnson?
Yes, go ahead.
So I have made the request to Mr. Creek through Mr. Payette to add these two amounts and to request that they both come out of the gas tax. So the proposal is for $20,000 for the Duke Road East study. And then a entirely separate process is $20,000 to facilitate the development of the Parks and Trails Master Plan. If I can just explain where I'm coming from on those. So in terms of the Duke Road East project, I want to harken back to the meeting that we had on July 31st, and we were all here. One of the themes that came out of that meeting was almost a near universal view that there was pedestrian safety issues on Duke Road in its entirety. And I believe one of the things that we were sent away from is finding ways to address those pedestrian safety issues, of which a trail is part of the answer. So based on the approval from council last year, we were granted $20,000 from the gas tax. We used $11,000 for that for the survey of Duke Road East. So we now have material, and we now have the basis to begin making some informed discussions about what we can do on Duke Road East. So whether that is a trail or whether that speed bumps, crosswalks, advisory shoulders, we now have the material to begin close study of that. And that is a main part of what the $20,000 is for. One thing that I have to just harken back to again are comments that have been made about this project being controversial. Again, I go back to that July 31st meeting. I did not hear a single person in that room that night outright opposing the idea of a trail, nor did I hear anyone opposing the idea of trying to make Duke Road a safer place to walk. And I drive that road so often, and pretty much every time I do, I see somebody walking on that trail or along the road. The other thing I have to harken back to as well is the number of surveys that we've had that have talked about how important walking is to Machosen, going all the way back to the Village Square study and also the active transportation study too. So short of this being a distraction, if focused on improving pedestrian safety, that is a critical and core function of local government. It is not frivolous, it is not a vanity project, it is something that I think is a core function. So the request is for $20,000 to look at a trail and other public safety aspects that can be done. So that is the context within the Duke Road East proposal.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And as Councillor Epp had mentioned to us last night, there is another survey coming out, I believe, from the After Transportation. So if people are truly opposed to this, this is the time, this is probably the last time to speak up about that. So I appreciate you bringing us to current state of affairs and reminding us of where we are with that to date. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to the trail or to the safety. What I'm concerned about is the money. So I too was at the meeting and it was all about safety, but very little about a trail. So I appreciate what you're saying today. A study would be done looking at trail and speed bumps and what actually would make it safe. We've reduced the kilometers per hour for cars. I guess next year the lines will be moved in. Who would we hire to do the study?
So so what we're planning on doing right now is accessing our engineer, and also PTASK has formed a subcommittee of 3 people that will also be part of this. So yeah, so part of the $20,000 is actually for the engineer's time as well. One other thing I should ask, I do recognize that the active transportation study is, we've just seen a copy of it today. I will, abide by, the process that's done, and if there's other priorities that have been identified that are higher than Duke Road East, willing to, concede that. One thing I have to say, though, is the Duke Road East discussion has been going on for much longer than, the active transportation process is going. So it's not meant to subvert. It was just kind of a discussion that had been going on before, and we continued it on. So, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
So just looking at the minutes of PTASK, what seems to have happened is that we got the Duke Road survey, and then it's difficult, and people are having trouble on the committee interpreting the survey. So with their PTASK is seeking interpretation from experts. I know, or we've had the experience, I guess, of putting in a crosswalk at Hans Helgeson, and the study was done by some experts. So it would seem to me this wouldn't be the job necessarily of volunteers to decide whether speed bumps work or advisory shoulders or a trail, but rather somebody with the experience to say this is what you do in this situation. So I'm just a little bit anxious about that, the use of the money. We spent $11,000 now, $20,000 coming, and from my view of it, the trail going up where the ravines are on either side of the road will be so much money that we won't be able to afford it. So I'm just concerned about studying and doing more studying without sort of an endpoint. Now, I did speak to the CAO about this, and he was advocating a different path, and maybe we, through the chair, we could ask him to explain how else we might tackle this spending less money.
Can you ask the question again?
Oh, through the chair, Mr. Pyatt, you were saying that we could probably tackle this spending less money, and I wondered what the other option was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had the survey conducted through our engineering company, Westbrook, and so Westbrook would be able to meet with myself and PTASK representatives and walk walk the road and look at it from a engineering perspective for safety and walkability. And we can conduct that visual review very quickly. And I've asked if we could get sort of an understanding of costs analysis. So if that would be appropriate to council, we could undergo that fairly quickly and help budget discussions.
Thank you. Councillor Shukin.
Thank you. The one thing I need to mention is, first of all, no decision has been made to move ahead with trail or otherwise, and that decision would not be made by volunteers. It would come back, they would make a recommendation, it would come back to the folks at this table. I think I mentioned this last night, so yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Well, I'd like to propose that we take the CAO up on the offer of doing this while we're considering the budget, so we can get the numbers back and figure out whether we need to spend this money or not.
The one thing I would add, though, is if we're engaging the engineer in looking at a project or a range of projects. So by that I mean the place of a roadside trail, place of an advisory shoulder. There was also talk during the meeting on July 31st of making Duke Road East a one-way street. So all of that is going to take some money, and that's what the $20,000 is allocated for. So again, this is money that I'm advocating to be drawn from our gas tax. The last time I checked on our gas tax, and maybe Mr. Creek might correct me on this, we had something like $630,000 in the gas tax amount, unless it's been drawn. But as I'm recalling, I don't think money has been drawn from that on a regular basis. I don't recall any money ever being drawn. So to me, if we don't need the money, it's not going anywhere, we can pull from it as we need, as we've done before with the surveys, say. So again, to me, allocating $20,000 is a pretty small amount in terms of, you know, taking a step toward resident safety and mobilizing some of the ideas that are likely in the active transportation plan. So.
Councillor Gray.
Just to return, I take there's no objection to following the CAO's recommendation to have the engineer walk it with some people and see if get some ideas about where we might go.
No.
Great. So do you need a motion for that, Mr. Payette?
I don't really need a motion for that. I was carrying on with that operationally anyway, so I don't need a formal resolution. But the $20,000 would be approved in the budget process, and we have a ways to go yet, so more to talk about.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what you're saying, Councillor Shukin, is this 40,000 is covering the study and some information gathering still in consult with the ATP. And then you have your subcommittee who is going to be boots on the ground, considering what we had talked about, I presume, in the beginning about the different phases. And we wouldn't be acting on that; those phases or whatever would be coming back to council.
Yeah. What I'm asking for is that this be considered within the, the spending allocations for this year to allow us to have some flexibility to engage the engineer. And also, if it pans out, and again, if we have approval, sorry, I should mention this too, if it proves itself that a trail is viable, that we can actually begin to undertake some work on that trail. Again, the big thing being volunteer time, and if we dispatch that volunteer time, it is done with the approval and consent of the people at this table. So.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Just on that point, Mr. Pat was explaining to me that, proceeding with this, and I'm not sure in relation to other experiences, perhaps the Weirs Beach stairs, we need to get professionals doing this rather than the volunteers, so we got a quality trail in the end. So, and again, reading the PTAS minutes is not clear. The survey is done, but we can't really read the survey. I'm thinking what we need to really get the CEO involved in this in terms of where we're going and how much is volunteer and how much is hiring people to do this work. And so just because it looks like it's going to be a big job and expensive. We've got the potentially 40,000 here and then 70,000 on the active transportation network. These are, 10 grand here, 10 grand there, that's up after a while. So I'm in support of getting the work done, Councillor, through the chair, Councillor Shukin, just how we do it and involving our CAO so that we got that leadership, I think it would be good. And then we have some opportunity to avoid some costs as well.
Mayor Little.
Yeah, in the past, we have used both volunteers and professionals. So Harold Perbalkin is a Metchosin resident. He's now retired, but has offered his services when we do need his help. But he is a professional, works for BC Parks, and knows his business. So he is what I would call a professional.
Councillor Gray.
So just switching over now to the Weirs Beach stairs, we learned yesterday that we'd spent $23,000 on that. That's 53% cost overrun. And I was wondering, in terms of that, if that's a priority in terms of the spending of dollars, or we have another potentially, I think we heard last night, a maximum of $8,000 more, and where that money would come from. Do we need to put that in the budget here through the chair to Mr. Creek?
Through the chair. So I'll correct that number for the cost of the stairs themselves. So it was $19,220 for the stairs. That came out of the recreation budget. The $3,000 to $8,000 cost to repair right now is kind of booked into the trails development costs, which would cover that. If you want to add on an extra, $5,000, cut it in the middle, we could certainly do that. But right now, there's enough in the budget to cover the repair of the Weir Beach stairs.
Question about that. The other question that has come up is, was there any kind of a warranty on that work? Do we have that information at hand, or do we need to look into the file for that?
So through the chair, I didn't have time to look into all that. The only thing I saw was what the cost was, what budget it came out of, but I can go dig into warranty, who did it, what the engineer report was said, that type of thing, and we can bring that information to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shukin?
Yeah, thank you for the update, Mr. Creek. I will say I've walked the Weir Beach stairs a number of times, and once again today, the stairs going down to the beach are seemingly solid, and that's good news, especially after a storm. We do have an issue that we have to deal with in terms of the bottom part tonight. It's great to hear that staff are working on this. But regarding the Duke Road East study, I would move that $20,000 be allocated to the study of transportation safety and with the potential of a roadside trail, that any decisions on actions on Duke Road East be brought back to council for approval. So moved.
Okay, moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Mayor Little. Any further discussion? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I'll vote against the motion simply because our CEO is going to do some work and come back with a number for us, so I'm going to look for that.
Any other comments? Councillor Little? Yep? No? Okay, called question. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed by Councillor Gray. Okay. Councillor Shukin.
Sorry, I hate to belabor these spending things, but I just wanted to address the Parks and Trails Master Plan amounts. Okay. So a request is being made for $20,000 to support the Parks and Trails Master Plan development process. Now, I don't believe we're actually going to spend the full amount. We're not looking to engage a consultant full-time, but we will still need funds to support mapping, possibly a graphic designer when it comes time to actually print and produce the thing. And we might do some spending in terms of preparing public engagement meetings and all printing poster boards or materials for the public. What I was hoping for is to get an allocation that will actually sustain the process through its paces, which probably will be at least a year. So I'm expecting that we won't be done until around this time next year. So probably the timelines are similar to the active transportation plan, maybe a little longer. But the question might be asked is, why do a Parks and Trails master plan right now? First of all, the current one is outdated. There's an element that was done in 1986. There was another element that was done in 2009. One of the things that a completed plan will actually allow us to go for grants as well. So that's part of the reason why we're doing the active transportation plan. So the other thing too is that we're seeing tremendous growth on the edges of Metchosin in Langford and Colwood. And doing the plan is actually going to help us sort of understand how to grapple with that growth. And I would say particularly on the bufferland, if it does become parkland. One of the elements that I'm hoping to bring in to the P&T plan, if you will, is actual park management plans for each of our assets. So that's what we've discussed at PTASK. But we also have continuing questions coming up about our parks assets. So we've had people from Saddleback and Highmount concerned about parks and trails there. We have orphan parks that seemingly we're not doing a lot with, say in the Graceland area or in Leafield. And again, Weir Beach Stairs, which is a trail that's has frequently been used, and also again going back to the buffer. So that's part of why we're looking at doing the Parks and Trails master plan. And again, $20,000 is being requested. It's a small amount, I would argue, and I suspect we won't spend. But I just wanted to have that allocation to take us through the entire process, and again, pulled through the gas tax money. So,
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Just for clarity, through the chair to Councillor Shukin, will that include looking at the beaches, like the beachheads, Taylor Beach and Weirs Beach? Is that part of it? I would like it to be.
I think it should be, yeah. PTASK is pretty focused on parks and trails, but I think the beaches need to be brought into that as well. And sorry, one thing is the current set of documents we have at parks. Sorry, the 1986 document deals loosely with a whole bunch of things, but the 2009 plan is just trails. So the point of this is to incorporate everything, and I think the beaches would be really good to bring in as well.
Looping the corridors. Mayor Little.
Yeah, I just to clarify, it would include the trail to the beach. The jurisdiction of the beach is not our responsibility or our authority. So not the beaches, but the trail to the beach or the parking lot that was surrounding for beach access.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I still think there's an interest in the beaches. We can't necessarily develop a management plan for the beaches, but I think we can recognize that we have a deep interest in those in Weir and Taylor Beach for sure. So, yeah.
Councillor Gray.
For example, last year, I believe, Mayor Little, you authorized the doggy disposal places at the beachheads, and we then removed them. But I think that's a live topic still. You know, what should we do? And it would be nice if it was picked up in terms of what do we do about garbage, or what's the best plan? As Councillor Shuka was mentioning a moment ago, the population pressures on our community will be big with our neighbors coming out here, and I tend to use the word we need to harden the parks. Figure out what we're going to do with all that extra traffic. And it would be nice if we could include the beachheads in that. I take your point that we don't own the beaches.
Mayor Little.
Yeah, but then through the chair, that's not the beaches. That would be up at the top of the trail or in the parking lot. We wouldn't be able to put those down on the beach.
That's what I'm asking, actually, to be looked at. I think we'd much succeed, for example, we don't need to go into it today, but with the garbage containers down the path a little bit, and that'll probably remedy some of the situation. There's lots to look at in that. It's just the needs there. I know you've appreciated that pass, and I think Councillor Shuka is saying it could be part of the review. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Councillor Shukin.
And sorry, one other point too, similar to Duke Road East and the approval of works on that road coming back here. So PTASK is doing the Parks and Management Plan, but it is going to be up to this council to approve it and make recommendations back to PTASK for changes or change of scope and all that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Little?
So I am in favor of allotting $20,000 towards the plan. We get an incredible deal with the Parks and Trails committee. They're a hands-on committee. We could not afford to have 2 or 3 full-time employees to do what the Parks and Trails do. So I think it would be too much to ask them to complete the master plan. And we have invested in other plans like the agricultural plan, climate action plan, and not put that on the advisory committee. So I would be in favor of this.
Thank you. CAO Payette, did you have a comment? Because I saw your hand up there a little bit back. Sorry.
Yeah, just wanted to suggest that I could be part of the master plan process with your committee. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great offer. Thank you, Mr. Pat.
Okay. I think we can go on to the next one. Or did we have a motion? Sorry, I've lost track now.
I would move that an allocation of $20,000 from the gas tax be
For the master
provided
plan.
for the Parks and Trails master plan. So moved.
Okay, and a second, Mayor Little. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Please.
Through the chair, I'm going to rope in the next two, kind of combine, the fire department and EOC, Emergency Operations Center. So the fire department had a budget of $841,000 in 2024. EOC had $25,400. Bumped those up to $894,000 and $27,000 respectively. The fire department is down $8,300 from the original presentation. That is because of the EOC building has been fully amortized in 2024, and then there was additional training revenue based on what we've received in 2024, along with what Fire Chief Dunlop has done with JIBC and additional training courses happening in 2025. And then EOC, the only change, reduced $30 because of the janitor contract. Discussion.
Comments, council? Or committee? Councilor Gray?
Yeah, I wondered, it's on the revenue side, but you know, we're doing a heck of a job the fire department's doing a heck of a job in their first responder service to our community. And it seems to me that to some degree, we're lightening the load for the ambulance service, which is provincially funded. And I'm just wondering, at some point, ought we be talking to the province about some support for the basically first responder service that we're providing. I don't know if there's a mechanism for that. Mayor Little, perhaps you know, or others, or Mr. Payette through the chair.
Well, I would defer to the CAO, but I would suspect the first step would be to have informal discussions with those that we had discussions in our Bring Back the Calls initiative. And then from there, write advocacy letters. It's a little bit tricky because we did ask for it. We did ask for all the calls to come back. But there is a case that we don't have an ambulance service near us. The closest is Langford or Souk. So we could reach out to those counterparts that we had those discussions and begin them. Yeah, I suspect they wouldn't be very receptive, given that the e-com and the VIMQ and all the other, and the housing, everything else that they want to download to us. But it's only time and paper. I guess we could try.
The other option may be that we have a meeting with ministers at UBCM like we did this past time. Sit down and have a conversation as well following writing letters and such. It's an option. I have to say, with my recent situation, having an accident and an ambulance escort me to the hospital, the particular paramedics actually were from Central Saanich, and actually when we left, they went the wrong way to the hospital. But they're always roaming, and you never know. Fortunately for me, they got here in time because they had been moved to the West Shore that particular day, but not knowing the lay of the land. However, our first responders there were there in very, very quick time. So very grateful for that service, and we've invested significant time, energy, and money thanks to the leadership of the fire chief on that. So we do have very good service here, and if we can get some sort of remuneration for that, that would be helpful. It was interesting, the pilot project they did try out there a number of years ago, and fortunately I believe 10 women that were loud and clear on getting those calls back made a successful campaign, and here we are with our service that we have in this little community. So grateful for all of that.
Well, yeah, and I guess what I'm thinking, it has a financial impact.
Mhm.
So last year, we increased honorariums by 40%, from $3,000 to $12,000. And we increased allowances, the fire department allowances, a 30% increase, 30% increase. And those are related to the calls. In addition, the new FTE was brought on for that purpose as well. And last year that was a $65,000 increase. So all of that kind of related to the issue of how are we providing the medical calls a little bit more. I'm not saying the people are available obviously for the fire calls as well, but a lot of the work and the justification was around the medical call-outs. So that's significant. Now, I said honorariums last year we gave a 40% increase, and we're being asked for a 60% increase this year, 60. The allowances, we gave a 30% increase last year, and we're seeking a 7.7% increase for this year. And I'm not clear, like, have those pay increases already been implemented? The chair to Mr. Creek.
Through the chair, I would have to check with the fire chief on that one. Can't say that they have been. I haven't seen it myself. Right now, we're still operating on the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. So certainly has been approved in the budget, but I would have to check and get back to you.
Thank you. Through the chair, if we get that information back, I'm just curious if we're rubber stamping it or if we're actually making the decision today. If it's already happened, then I'm not really clear on how it works. As regards to the FTE, we all recall the rate increase last year. The position was brought in, and now we're being sought a 41% increase in the pay. And I wonder, what's the mechanism for approval of that increase?
Through the chair, can you go with the question again? Were you asking about how the increase in pay for the new firefighter happened?
Well, I'm just interested. I think the FD is currently being paid at a rate, and again, it's our role now. How was the decision made to increase the rate of pay? I'm happy with it. I just wondering about the mechanism and if we're just rubber stamping it today.
So through the chair, the rate of pay that they're getting paid today is the same as it was in 2024 when it was approved. The budget for this year is for a full year compared to last year's that wasn't a full year. Although there is all of the union staff that we are paying has seen an increase that hasn't been approved, just kind of based on what we're expecting, just so that we don't have such a large retro pay in the future. But that would be how it was approved.
Right, and so is it council that approves that? Is it a council level decision through the chair?
Through chair, yes, council approves pay for all staff under municipal guidance. Anybody with a contract with us is approved by council.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing about the allowances and that. And I'm just curious if they've already been put in play, but council's meant to approve them. Then we got something mixed up there. And so I just like the processes to be a little clearer so that going forward, we don't run into that again.
Councillor Hebb.
And I just wanted to say that I think the money that we spend on our fire department is very well spent money. As far as I know from past discussions that the BC Ambulance Service is underfunded and understaffed, and if there's money coming from the province, I think they would like it for themselves, not wanting to see that money be transferred to fire departments. There was recently a call in Metchosin that took 2 hours for the ambulance to get there. And so I think that to have a strong, well-trained, well-staffed fire department here is really essential for our residents.
I'll
Councillor Gray.
just say that I'm completely agree with you, 100%. I'm just concerned about, because we're talking money and budgets, how the approvals occur and where they're approved. But I support all the things that we're talking about here. I'm just getting clear our role in approvals versus others.
Okay, Mr. Creek, go ahead. Okay.
Councillor Johnson,
Councillor
sorry.
Shukin?
Wake up here. Mr. McPherson made a comment a little while sort of at the opening of the meeting about potential purchase of a fire truck in the next year. Don't want to lose sight of that, but I don't think now is the place to talk about it. One of the things that we might do, I think we do in June or something like that, is look at reserves. And it would be interesting to understand what we have in terms of reserves for fire replacement costs, fire equipment replacement costs. But just wanted to acknowledge that we haven't forgotten that comment that came earlier.
Right. Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry to start.
No, that's good. There's $50,000 in the budget for this year going towards that truck. And yes, it is on the horizon for next year. I did notice that as well. So there's, I'm sure there'll be more investigation and questions coming forward for that. Mr. Creek.
Right, so through the chair, guess the next line there, Public Works. So 2024 budget was 1.99 million, increased 41,330 to 2,035,000. Budget median variance of 88,000 from the first budget to the second budget. The majority of that comes from amortization. So a number of assets have reached the end of their accounting life anyway. That's reduced that total cost by $74,000 for 2025. And then the rest of them was just a reduction based on what we've seen in the 2024 costs. So related to road surface contracting, ditching and culverts, the works yard, vehicle maintenance, and road administration makes up the rest of that 14,000. Discussion?
Councillor Gray.
I'm thinking that, or I'm hoping that when we look at the 5-year plan, we'll be able to build in the roads management plan, which we haven't seen yet, but that's coming. So it probably wouldn't affect this year, but would affect the coming years. Is that a fair comment? Through the chair to Mr. Creek.
Through chair. It'll be booked in, but it'll be under the capital budget rather than the operating budget for public works. So it won't affect these lines per se. But it'll. Right now, I've got a kind of a placeholder in the capital budget of $500,000 for each year going forward until 2029. That'll cover most of the cost of the repairs that are happening.
Thanks. And then I did have a question about that one road. I guess I'd written an email just wondering about Briarwood and Metchosin Road. I'm not sure if that's in the cap of the operating, but whether or not those costs might be shared with Colwood, given that they had, I guess, torn up the road to put in some utilities. Is there any ability to share there? Do we know yet, or still investigating through the chair?
Through the chair, thank you for the reminder. I did not check in after the last meeting regarding that. We can certainly take a dive into that, see what Colwood can do for us.
Thank you.
Okay, next, go ahead.
And so the last one is the school. 2024 had a budget of 187,000. The 2025 final budget is estimated to be 191,000. The total increase from the first budget meeting to the second is 24,000. I was hoping for a far better number until I came about the amortization for the year because of the renovations to the gym and school that were completed in 2024. Increased our amortization cost quite a bit and drove this from a reduction in budget to an increase in the budget to 191, even though we did increase the revenue from the school quite a bit. So in 2024, we had budgeted revenue of about $80,000 with the common costs. In 2024, collected well over $100,000, and now we're budgeting $113,000, so almost a 50% increase from 2024, and expecting a lot, hoping for more because of the West Shore, finally getting some programming in there, then additional, all the work that the fire chief has done to get more training and rentals at the classrooms. Discussion.
Councillor App.
Just a couple of things, and sorry to backtrack. I'm just wondering if we need a motion for that firefighter position or not.
Through the
Or if
chair.
it's in-
Not as far as I'm concerned. We put it into the budget, so if you're okay with what we're projected for the fire department, then it's good to go. That'll be your approval.
Okay.
But nothing for that
Great.
one specific position.
Okay, great. The other thing was on the school, because I was at a seniors meeting this morning, and once again, they brought up the fact of the malfunctioning automatic door. And this has been going on for months now. They did get one quote on fixing or replacing the door. It was $6,800. And so I wondered if there's anywhere either in this budget or in some reserves that that might not be the final fee, cost of that, but it really is important, as it's the only automatic door that we have at the school for accessibility. So I think it really needs to work. It only works sometimes if it's pounded 5 or 6 times, which unless they put a sign up, most people don't know enough to pound it 5 or 6 times. I mean, the doors are an issue there, but that one I think is important to look at.
Through the chair. You bet. There is a line in our capital budget for school for $10,000 every year, just for random things that pop up, promoting a building that's 50 years old. So you can certainly come out of that, or you can request a top that up. So I had 15,000, then we'll have about 9,000 to play with for whatever might fall apart over there in regards to the school.
I'd like to make a motion to that effect. Sure which exactly would work. A motion for, was it $10,000 there, or do I make it for 15, or?
I would say motion for an extra 5,000.
Okay, for an extra 5,000 to add to that. We may not need it, but just in case, just because I think that is an important accessibility issue at the school.
Okay, do we have a second for this motion? Second by Councillor Shukin. Any comments?
Sorry, just for clarity from Councillor Up to Mr. Creek, maybe this will be our capital budget item. Just adding to, sorry, I think you said that.
Yeah, through the chair, yes.
Definitely a good investment. We've had trouble with that door for nearly a year now. Some days it works, some days it comes open partway, and now we're having to pummel the switch. Okay, so any other comments on that? Okay, call the question. All in favor? And it's carried unanimous. Thank you. Next.
Perfect. All right. Guess we can hop on.
Councillor Gray, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just about the school, I saw in the minutes, I think it was the Healthy Communities, that the proposal for the Village Square would come forward in March, or I'm not sure if I got the date right. But is there money in the budget for that at the moment? I don't recall. I know we raised it, but I don't know if anything happened.
No, through the chair, no, we don't have anything for whatever that project's supposed to be. Anybody have an estimated cost? We can certainly add it. Or
There's a lot of grants opening up right about now, so that would be a good place to start looking to. Councillor Ed?
So think that, I know we are going to be hearing from the Village Square Society. I mean, they had a lot of plans to get money themselves on their own for this, and this would be seeing as how the main entrance is off the table, I think the main focus now would be on just the courtyard. So I don't know how much, the district would be asked to contribute to that. We'll find out more when they come back to a meeting.
Okay, any other comments on that, Councillor Gray? You brought that forward.
No, I'm just interested that if, just that I saw it was coming in March and I wasn't sure what would be done about it, and I'm up to the group.
Okay, good, thank you. Mr. Creek.
Okay, so I guess that wraps up our Schedule B for the expenses. Schedule C, it's, I guess, the good stuff, the revenue. As I mentioned earlier, the federal government payment in lieu of taxes, original budget in 2024 was 1.13 million. I've increased it to 1.25 based on what we've received this year and their current assessments for 2025, resulting in an increase of revenue of 120,000. Bank interest, the original budget for 2024 was 160,000. The 2024 through 2028 financial plan had that lowering itself to 140,000. Based on what we've collected and booked for 2024, I feel 180,000 is more than reasonable. Gives us, we're likely to be in a surplus on that, but just not as much. So I figured add another 20,000. It's almost 1% on taxes. The unfortunate part is the small community protection grant. The original budget was 525,000 for 2024. We ended up only receiving 513,000. So I reduced the budget down to 515,000, hoping that they'll be able to give us $2,000 more, or at least we won't be so far off on our projected budget deficit. So I reduced that by 10,000. So a total change of $130,000 of revenue based on the original 2025 budget that was presented at the first meeting. Discussion?
Councillor Shukin?
Sorry, just for clarity, an increase in revenue of 130,000.
Through the chair? Correct.
Just want to say, nice work, Mr. Creek.
Through the chair. I didn't do anything. That was just looking at what's happening.
Councillor Gray?
Just a question to Mr. Creek through the chair. The payment in lieu money, there will be, or we're putting some money away in a reserve, is my understanding, for when the payment in lieu drops. And that's taken into account when you're doing this figuring?
Through the chair. Correct. So we are putting away money into a reserve to offset the fact that the Mary Hill land is going to be taken over by the local First Nation. Don't know exactly when that's supposed to be occurring. I did book that into the budget for starting in 2028. There's a six-figure drop in there, but until then, I figured let's put in what we're actually receiving, help reduce our municipal charges for the residents. And then when it does come around, hopefully the value of all their other property has gone up enough to offset their drop. Keep pulling in 1.25.
So through the chair, so then we're still putting money into reserve now? Thanks.
Any other questions on Schedule C? No? Okay, let's keep moving forward.
Through the chair. So Schedule D, there was a bunch of talk about the electric vehicle at the last budget meeting regarding the operating costs, who's using the vehicle, that type of thing. So I just provided a breakdown here of, from the last 5 years, how much the insurance, fuel, the repairs and maintenance have cost, and then the staff mileage that's been related to people using their own vehicle rather than a company vehicle to travel around. So it starts off at just under $1,800 in 2020. And then 2021, we got a nice little ICBC refund for our insurance, which helped drop that cost down. And everything's just been going up ever since. And 2024 was $2,300. As Mr. McPherson noted, for grants, the federal EV grant has now expired at the end of January. The provincial grant is still holding on just until the end of March. That would be $3,000 if we get an electric vehicle, or $1,500 for a hybrid. And then if we get the vehicle now, we can use the climate action grant That funding has to be used by March 31st, 2028. After that, we have to use the funds by then, otherwise they might, it's unlikely, but they might ask for it back, or we'll have to use it for another project. If we did lease the vehicle, as previously mentioned, I looked at a few costs, got some quotes, be roughly about $500 a month or $6,000 a year to lease one. We could use the climate action funding for that up until March 31st, 2028. After that, it would have to go on to regular property taxes coming out of our regular reserves. Any discussion on that one?
Councillor Gray?
Just looking at the cost of fuel, it looks like the vehicle's being used much more than in the past. Is that so? I was kind of understanding that it wasn't being used too much.
So through the chair, yes, so I've been using it in order to go into meetings with West Shore Parks and Rec, and the CFO meetings down at MFA and the CRD. And then I believe the CAO has also used it and got stuck, that kind of thing. So it is being used. It's just not the most efficient vehicle, and it sticks out like a sore thumb, but
Councillor Shukin?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be the party pooper on this one. I think we've, I'm sensing we are going to need a new vehicle in time. I just think, to me this year, I think we have to hold, I'm in support of holding off and sticking with the approach that we took at I think it was the last budget meeting. So, yeah.
Okay. Schedule E?
yeah, so through the chair, Schedule E. So this is about the additional team member for Public Works. Council wanted a kind of a business case as to why we would need to hire a fourth member. So this kind of lays out the background and information, discussion about why it's somewhat required, and then financial analysis of what this ends up costing everybody at the end of the year. So based on what we currently hire for a current summer employee, just under $40,000. Full-time would be just under $100,000. We'd also be able to save on the annual hiring costs, the advertising, reviews, and then we also be able to save on standby costs because we'll be able to spread the standby hours over 4 people rather than just the 3. That'd be reducing the cost of one employee who gets paid the lead hand. They're not on call that much, so then it'd be passed on to the cheaper employee, that type of thing. So it ends up being equivalent to about $2.30 a month. I don't know, discussion?
Councillor Gray?
The question had come up before Councillor Shukin had raised, which was, with the additional employee, would there be an opportunity to reduce some of the contract service costs that we see? And that's not in the analysis, but I wondered if that still was a possibility, through the chair.
So through the chair, a lot of our contracting comes down to crack sealing. We no longer have a crack sealing machine. And then mowing, we don't have enough mowers to take that away from contractors. The paving itself, don't have any of the machines or anything like that. The only one that we could end up reducing is potentially the aerial brushing, where it's just trimming off trees that are above the roads, impacting lines, that type of thing. We shift some of the money from there, but again, not a significant amount saved from going from contractor to in-house based on those.
Just a second question, and I think it might be worth checking. Last night we had a discussion about the use of the Public Works people doing pesticide application or herbicide application. And that was, I think, to avoid the costs that we pay the CRD each year for that same service. And I heard around the table pretty clearly that people are anxious that we be diverting the Public Works people to this work and or to attending CRISP meetings and things. So I was just wondering if we could check the dollar value of that contract with the CRD and figure out if there's enough work for our people to be doing that or if we should leave it in the CRD's hands. Through the chair to Mr. Creek.
Through the chair, I'm not aware off the top of my head of what we're paying the CRD for invasive species. But we have, in the current financial plan, there is money related to invasive species control because 2 of our public works staff did obtain their license for using the chemicals needed to kill off the invasive species. So we have included additional budget this year in order to purchase the pesticide, herbicide.
Yeah, through the chair, you weren't in attendance last evening, Mr. Creek, but the idea was that we're kind of replacing the CRD service, but it seems such a small service. I wasn't sure that we should go to, after hearing council, whether we should go to that length. So just a notion of we're replacing one with the other, and let's check the costs before we embark too far down that path. Thanks.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I just want to thank Mr. Creek and Mr. Payette for putting this together. It is exactly what I was hoping to see. And, you know, I have to confess, we had a request a number of years ago for an additional hire here in the office that I was quite reluctant to go with. Eventually, my mind turned, and I supported the hiring of an additional staff person. And looking back, I just realized how foolish it was to be foisting on so much work onto that one staff person. Now, whether that's going on with Public Works, I don't have as clear a line of sight, but we have heard of this position in years past, and we have heard of some concerns, from other corners as well. I don't believe that there's good value or we're serving the community in shorting our labor team. It is already small, and our guys, the men and women that work for us do great work. But I'm also worried about, again, the continuing shorting of the actual labor force that we have. So we've, again, heard about this position in past years. Now we have it before us. And I'm willing to support the hiring of a 4th public works person. So,
Councillor F.
Yes, I also support hiring this person for all the reasons that are in this report, but we have heard this in the past. Last year there was a lot of pressure from the Public Works crew to say that they were understaffed and really needed that extra person, and to not have to hire summer auxiliary employees, who basically come in without much experience. We have the opportunity to have 4 really experienced people on the job to cover all the eventualities. We have one of the crew is a firefighter that gets called out to the fire calls, leaving 3. And if there's, as has been mentioned, if there's holidays, if there's sickness or injury involved, that can really be reduced down to almost nothing. And I think having 4 just gives a cushion. There's more and more pressure on Metchosin, as has been mentioned, from our neighboring communities, as far as even just a matter of the garbage that gets dumped on the sides of the roads, but as also with the extra people on our beaches and trails and parks. And I think this is it's just really good management to have a decent Public Works crew.
Any other comments? Mayor Little.
Yeah, I struggle with this one because I know it's not just one time we're going to have to pay this. It's every year with the wage and union wage increases. So this is a significant cost for this council to take on. I am not aware that we've ever had 4 full-time positions. It's always been 3. So that is misinformation, but I'm sort of on the fence, actually. I'm struggling with it just because this is a repeated cost that will go up. Not to say that I have great admiration for our Public Works crew, great admiration for the work that they do. I suspect that this report was prepared, that the CFO and the CAO are supportive of this position.
Through the chair, aside from the workload, that clearly we all appreciate that our staff are undertaking, not just Public Works, but inside staff as well. What strikes me as a concern is the staff not taking the appropriate time off for vacation, for sick leave, and for family issues. This year alone, I noted, and CFO can fine-tune the numbers, but I believe almost every staff member had to get paid out for overtime and vacation time. That means that they're not taking the appropriate time off for their families, and I'm concerned about that.
Go
And
ahead.
then it would be really great if we could go back to the model that we had, that the Public Works were trained with the fire department as well, so that 2 could go out and then 2 could stay in the district. I'd like to see that model followed, because that was the whole justification for the Public Works team, is because we had people within the district that could be dispatched for our volunteer firefighters. So that would be really great if we could follow that model.
Okay. So about 3 years ago, we had our building inspector retire, and he was a part-time building inspector, 3.5 to 4 days a week. And when the previous administration was here, they hired a full-time, or negotiated, I guess, it was a full-time building inspector, even though we don't have a lot of development. We do have the Beckingham, we have 1 or 2 more parcels. We don't have a lot of development here, and therefore when our interim CIO was here, she had negotiated for our building inspector to take the lead of supervising the Public Works Department. That is not full-time, that's intermittent. It's overseeing what's happening and once in a while stepping in, and it has been cited in here how much that extra cost can be. Since 2011, which is when we took over Public Works to be our own, we have always had 3 people. It's in the minutes. I've spoken to past employees, both during that time and previously when it was with our contractor, Mr. Payton, who did have 5 employees, but also had other contracts. And we have, for a portion of the year, a seasonal hire, as is cited in this report. And I appreciate that it takes time to source that person, interview them. Oftentimes, we have hired through the fire department. And I would encourage us to continue looking at that as a pool, because it gives us a person that's here, especially in those months, an extra person to be able to go and attend calls. What I would like to see, I know that this is going to be a cost, and it is a long-term cost, you're right. It's an investment of all the benefits, pensions, et cetera, and then incrementally it does increase. It doesn't go the other way, it always goes forward. So an increase to our taxes for our residents. That perhaps this year what we look at is, and Councillor Epp had actually said this about 3 budget meetings ago, contract out the lighter duties. We have very skilled labor in the Public Works Department that operate big machines, big trucks. However, they also do mowing of the 2 fields, so mowing lawns, weed eating the ditches in the core, leaf blowing, that sort of thing. And there was a time where we actually did contract that out to a local contractor. And that might be somebody either from the university, because it is about those months that they're coming out of university, where there is a lot of growth in our roadside trails of brambles, et cetera, so it can do those kinds of trimmings. And alleviate some of the pressure off of our Public Works staff so that they have the appropriate hours to work, time off, vacation time, that sort of stuff, which is operational. So it is up to our staff to make sure, our senior staff to make sure those things do happen. And we did just pass not too long ago just how much they can accumulate in overtime, so they do need to get a certain amount of time off, but they also have to take time off. So I would prefer for us to look at maybe, at least this year, a contractor who could take on the lighter duties that our skilled labor does not have to address quite as much, and maybe that will alleviate some of those pressures for this year and revisit this a year from now. Councillor Epp.
Just as a correction, or clarification, I should say, I mentioned a contract worker when we voted to have garbage bins by in the public area by the school and so on. I mentioned a contractor, maybe a contractor could monitor those. That was my only suggestion as far as a contractor. I think one thing we have to remember as far as our public works crew, which did request an extra person last year, is that they are union. And I think that you know, it could lead to problems down the road if we have an overworked staff that feel that they are understaffed, and the council is not willing to help them out or to support them, that the union could be involved. And that's, to me, that I find that a worry.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm just wondering how we've managed with 3 people and 3 union jobs in all these years without an issue. I realize we are asking a little bit more each time, and I agree, again, it's the garbage thing, which probably more used during those months where we have events and stuff, could also be onto this contractor. Councillor Gray, you had a comment.
Through you, a question to Mr. Creek. Is this position included in the budget as we see it before us today?
Through the chair, through the chair, yes, it is.
Thank you. I guess my concern would be that, reading the document and hearing what people have said, it seems to me that the benefit that we get in the community from a new position is essentially the efficiency of work. So more work can get done, more work gets completed. So that's a positive thing in terms of the services that we're providing. And when I look at it the other way, so that's benefit to the district. But then being responsible employers, I think we do need to look at the question of employee health. And we saw the very large overtime banks, which I think at least one individual, maybe 2, were in public works, and we've remedied that. We can't run people into the ground, as I think was occurring, or that's my take on the numbers that we saw. I think the idea that people need the ability to take their earned leave, in a time that meets their personal and family interests is important and should be important to us. And I think that there's also a role here. I don't think I saw it here, but succession planning. Who's there, and the staff that are there, and how we move forward. So I'm happy it's in the budget, and I think that now's the appropriate time. I want to be sensitive to the issues that people have raised about ability to pay and all of that, about our community. But I'm also noticing, and I think I have the number right here. We started off with it. The municipal increase with this included is at about 3.39%, leaving out the police and the other things. So it's actually a pretty reasonable tax increase for that slice of services with this position included.
Councillor Shipman.
Just picking up on something Mayor Little said about the blending of the public works position and the firefighter position, or the firefighter capabilities. There may be some benefits to that and maybe some drawbacks too, as in you might be more hireable. But is that something that is maybe a question to Mr. Payette? Is that something we can build in, or is desirable, or is something to use as an objective in terms of who to go after?
Through the chair, talking with the union representatives, our public works job descriptions do not include firefighting duties. And so to include that would be a review of the job description and pay. But that being said, a new hire, I personally believe that the skill set of a firefighter in a position like that is ideal. And so in the criteria of the posting, we could indicate skills in other duties such as that.
Councillor Epp.
Just want to move that we approve the hiring of a new Public Works employee.
Second.
Motion by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Comments? Councillor Gray.
And just to be certain about this, I'm asking a question. Have we got this position with the duties and the pay rate approved by the union? In other words, it's all worked out now that we've got the right pay rate and everything if we approve this, or the position description?
Mr. Creek.
Through the chair, yes, that 99,292 is the full cost of somebody if they started January 1st, based on what we were paying a step one laborer in the Public Works Department, along with the estimated increase that we would have from the 2024 union agreement to 2025.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we got a motion and a second supporter. No further comments. I call the question. All in favor? And it's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other comments for Mr. Creek before I open it up to the floor? Seeing none, ask the public to step up to the mic and provide some feedback or ask some questions for the Finance Committee. You're welcome to do that now, please.
Points which I would like to raise, just for clarification. I realize this is draft, but the total municipal tax bill or tax share of the total tax bill then would be 3.39 plus 2.75 plus something like 1.15 or so for e-com. So we're looking at about 7.29.
So not quite, like the police number, just because the amount of police tax revenue that we generate from 1% isn't the same as the municipal. So let me,
Through the chair, Mr. Creek, I wonder if we might get a copy of the overheads.
through the chair, you bet. So for the police tax levy, so that's $7.28. It's actually equivalent to about a 0.5% tax increase. I spoke earlier that it was a 0.75, so it's actually 0.5, just over. So 3.39 plus 0.5 for the police, and then another 1.2 for e-com. So you're looking at about 5.09%.
Okay, so that'll be the total for the municipal share. Draft, it could change between now and then, but that's
Correct.
more or less where we are.
Yeah.
And so anything else after that are from legislative authorities and all the add-ons that go into the tax bill.
Correct. We haven't received the CRD requisition yet, or the hospital, or BC
Right.
Transit, so
Okay.
that'll kind of be.
The other comment which I wanted to make, a couple comments which I wanted to make. One was I was interested in the comments with regard to the public works people buying out rather than taking holidays, etc. I do question as to whether or not that is a matter of their choice, basically to increase their own incomes. It's hard to live out there these days. The other point that I wanted to make was basically in support of Councillor Gray's position with regard to the way that he was proposing that e-com be paid off right off the bat. I am concerned, particularly after Councillor Shukin commented that a few years down the road, this projected impact on the provincial government would be so severe. I really question as to whether, I really doubt whether or not the chosen, like all other municipalities, would be subject to maybe significant cutbacks in municipal or provincial transfers to municipalities. Quite frankly, I mean, this whole business of the tariffs scares the hell out of me. and I think it should scare the hell out of everybody. I am concerned particularly, with the comment made earlier that from Mr. Creek, that the grant in lieu of taxes from the federal government is going to take a dip once Mary Hill is sorted. What might we expect? Maybe half? So we've got a reduction in possible reduction in provincial revenues to the municipality, a reduction in the grants in lieu of taxes from the federal government, ever increasing expenditures from the municipality. And what I'm seeing is, by the use of reserve funds, shoving down to a time when it's even less financially secure than we are now, a lot of bills which will give a lot of hurt to a lot of people. And I think, quite frankly, where we are now, whatever we should be paying, we should try to pay off as quickly as possible. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Gary Lamb, Hackmore Drive. A question for the CFO on Schedule A. I'm just trying to reconcile some numbers here. If you look at the recreation and cultural services for 2025, it shows 127,234. And then below that, you show 2 transfers to the library services and the West Shore. So when you add those 3 numbers, you get 1,096,226. When you come down to the schedule on the bottom of the page, which is prepared on an accrual basis, you show recreation and cultural services of 1,696,226. The difference being exactly 600,000. What is that attributed to?
Yeah, so at the moment, not off the top of my head, I do not know. But I do not know off the top of my head, but I will get back to you on that one. Because Councillor Gray also asked the same question. Where is that coming from? So I will dig into that.
Okay.
See what the formula said.
Okay, appreciate it.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Darren Brown, Graceland. 2 topics off the top of my head. One is that if we are dipping into reserves to pay the 911 e-com transfers, that's like selling the family silverware to pay the credit card. Okay, it's not good management practices. I urge you to reconsider that decision. Secondly, I think it's important to stress that the Weirs Beach stairs are not usable. They are not safe. Please, despite what you may have heard here, do not use the Weirs Beach stairs access. It's dangerous, and to suggest it's not is dangerous. So the foundation of those stairs is gone, and it should not be used. Right now, it's a liability, not an asset. It's a liability we paid $20,000 for, and we're going to pay more and maybe make it into an asset, but that's the current state. It's not safe, and we shouldn't suggest it is. Last year, we submitted a petition outlining the community's concerns and priorities about Duke Road East, and we had the majority of the people on Duke Road East sign that petition. We asked for a community priority, a funding pause until we assured that. We had asked for environmental impact analysis, including potential tree removal, drainage risks, and safeguard to our local environment. We asked for financial transparency, detailed breakdown of full project costs, and a strategic alignment. What's the clear clarification and how this proposal aligns with existing strategic plans? So we explicitly asked for the funding to be halted until a comprehensive community assessment is completed. Then we asked for open forums, full financial disclosure, and clear evidence on how it fits into the broader community plans. Unfortunately, since this petition was submitted, we have seen only a brief 4-minute public participation session that was very much focused on the survey that was happening up and down the street. It was subject like, we are going to discuss the survey and how this will impact you. There has been no decision. We are not planning this. We are just conducting a survey. We want to make sure everyone's informed, and we were allowed 4 minutes to speak. No one spoke against the trail because the concept was we're just gathering information and we're getting information. This is the survey we're conducting and this is how it'll go. So we haven't seen materials from that public consultation. We haven't seen the results of the survey. And meanwhile, we wait for the active transportation plan. So we're putting the cart before the horse, right? Projects are being pushed forward without the necessary foundational plans in place. A critical issue is the current structure of the Parks and Trails Committee. At the direction of Councillor Shukin, the liaison to the committee, the responsibilities have split into multiple subcommittees. Oh, could you imagine, right? Any subcommittee problems caused lately? Unfortunately, these subcommittees lack accountability. There's no notes, no documented decision-making, very little transparency. It's the wrong approach. This fragmentation is eroding public trust, undermining our collective ability to manage community resources responsibly. I'm also deeply concerned by the premature discussions regarding roadside trail design. For instance, the Parks and Trails chair asked me, not an engineer, just an interested person, how we might avoid runoff from the end of the trail. It suggests that conclusions are being drawn before a full analysis of the trail's need, priority, and appropriate methodology has been conducted. At the same time, pressing issues like deterring foundation of Weirs Beach continue to be overlooked. If we rush into engineering decisions without a holistic review, we risk escalating costs and potentially compromising both safety and sustainability. So thank you very much for getting an engineer to have a look at that. I want to emphasize that our goal is not to force a solution, but to ensure decisions are made in impartial and based on facts. We must allow community to decide the best use of public tax dollars without preconceived conclusions influenced by lobbying efforts. Moreover, if one budget item is marked as being applicable to gas tax, then for sake of clarity, we should mark all applicable to gas tax items the same so we don't mislead people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ditto. You said it all. But my question or observation is somehow this Duke Road East has just been pushed straight up as a priority, which I don't quite understand because in March there'll be another public information day, or March 5th, whatever you call it. And to date, I saw on the website the amount of people that filled out a survey from the public was under 300 people. And I'm thinking you're basing everything on this Duke Road East, which somehow has fallen under active transportation, which is only one part of the whole picture, because it's going to cost a lot to do it. And then it turns over to Public Works to maintain it. And somehow you guys, most guys, women too, forget every free thing costs after the fact. And Duke Road East will not be cheap. So before pushing it ahead as a priority, I really wish you'd look at the other things that are going on in Metchosin that have needed work on them long before Duke Road East. That's a fluffy. Safety, okay, but no road in Metchosin is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at the end of our agenda, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.